Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? And a happy Tuesday to all of our listeners. So
there it is. Excellent.
It's always a happy Tuesday.
It's always a happy Tuesday.
Good weekend for everyone. Things have been very busy.
Yes.
My kids were away for the weekend. They went out to a camp for the weekend, which was kind of fun. It gave me some free time, and I was just hanging out, just chilling upstairs on Saturday. I got to just kind of play around on the computer for a bit, do some stuff that I wanted, fun stuff. I don't think my family understands. There are work hours when I'm doing things for work, and then there are fun hours. And to my family, it looks like I'm computering all the time. You're literally working nonstop. I'm like, well, I'm having fun now. They're like, what do you mean? You're still doing Power BI. But this is the fun part of Power BI. I'm doing what I want to do around Power BI. So just kind of it was interesting to I had to be careful how I balance that. But I had some fun this weekend playing around with some Power BI things. How about you guys?
You've been a little busy. I've seen some updates. I think I know why you've been working so late.
Oh, maybe you do.
But yeah. I definitely can't say I was playing around a little, bud.
Seth, how about you?
Yeah. No, this weekend was it's indoor soccer. Session 2 is over, so we get I think a week off here before session 3.
Oh, excellent!
The little one who's doing that.
That's awesome. And you're coaching the team too, right?
Assistant coaching, yeah.
Assistant coaching,
with his, but
assistant to the regional manager
teams. Yeah. So in session 2, there was a different person kind of leading the charge and took a step back. But session 3, I'm back in. I'm back in the game.
There we go. Boom.
So yeah, I feel you. I feel you about
soccer,
the Power BI stuff, though.
I would play soccer so well if Walter Wright was yelling at me from the sideline. Do it or else!
I got treats for you.
Score that goal!
Completely off topic, but what do you think it would be more intimidating if you were a 10-year-old playing soccer, if it was Walter White, and just because I was watching YouTube clips, or Joe Pesci from Goodfellas? Which one would either cause you to not want to fail more?
I never want to fail in soccer. Just don't. It's fun. I enjoy it. I just get winded all the time. That's my problem. Too old.
It looks so easy until you have to actually run.
Right? All the stinking time.
No, kids, this is how you would do it. Oh, wait. Not so fast. Slow down.
I guess I didn't realize how, I played soccer, but it is a ton of running. It's literally a run sprint sport. That's all it is.
Yeah.
All the time.
You literally are running either to get open.
Yep.
You're sprinting because you have the ball, but even when you don't, right? There's a lot of movement. And that's why I love watching it. Having played it in the past, is there's so much going on the field outside of just where the ball is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, Power BI thing. I got yelled at last night. I don't get to develop a lot anymore. Sure. But when the special projects come along, or the super sensitive ones, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, Seth, I could really use your help. And then I get right back into it. I'm like, I'm having so much fun. And my wife
that's good.
It is dinner. And I'm like, I am busy.
I'm having fun.
Dang it. Okay, I'll be there in 2 minutes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So in working hard on things, I'm getting things out the door here. So I just want to produce a little bit of announcement. We had a recent video come out there. The February desktop released, and one of the feature releases that come with February desktop is now they're blocking inappropriate JSON theme files. So theme files that do not work, they are now blocking them, and you're not able to load them into Power BI desktop. So one of the challenges with that is now you have to have a proper schema and all the settings correct inside the theme file. So we did a major update, and we've been really working towards this very quickly here. So we have a huge update for the theme generator. So themes.PowerBI.tips, I'll put it in the chat window. And we have updated our Power BI theme generator to have all the properties. This is the single tool that has all the properties of anything for Power BI desktop. So you won't find another tool out there that has more properties than us at this point. And then you'll also notice here too, we have also released in addition to the website, we now have an ability for you to save your theme files directly into a library. So you can now collect your own theme files, work on them, develop them, leave, come back, and reload them, and then continue editing them. So we are probably the most comprehensive out there, and there's more ideas coming. So stay tuned. More coming down the way here to join and do things with themes. I will note we have added a lot of preview features as well. So if you want to preview the color palette on a report, you can then click a button. It just shows up. If you have a bunch of saved themes and you want to look at the color palette that you have previously created, you can then click a little eyeball and it will render a report for you in real time, which is kind of cool. So it's a neat feature. Anyways, that being said, it's out now. Go check it out at themes.PowerBI.tips. And if you are so inclined to save your theme files, we're offering that as a service to you. $2 a month for saving your themes if you're going to pay yearly, and then $3 if you want to pay monthly. So I hope you guys find some value from it. I'm definitely using it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's saving me a ton of time. I can make standard stuff and just kind of reuse it over and over again. So hopefully that's going to help out everyone else in the community as well.
For those of you who may not know how important a theme file is and how much time it can save you, we did a whole episode on that. That's episode 64. We're more than happy to rehash that right now, but since we already had that hour-long episode, you can go check it out there. But yeah, super excited, Mike. Great job in getting all that stuff out there. And I think your YouTube video shows that the good thing that Microsoft did was get really strict about its schema and harden what it allows to be uploaded into the PBIX file.
Yes.
So that you don't they can extend on that, right? So once you have a hardened schema, the validation is strict, then you don't allow stuff that shouldn't be in there potentially. And it just kind of opens up the door for potentially more automation or people interacting with the tool, etc. So the fact that
technically a security risk.
Right. Our tool validates that you can create your themes, you can save your themes now, and you have all of those properties.
Yes.
So think themes for people that may not be completely plugged in are kind of like templates, right? They are the reusable thing that you can just upload into every PBIX file, and the capability is fantastic, but you have to almost have developer-like skills to create a JSON file.
Yes.
So this whole thing, the tool itself simplifies that.
Everything.
All the properties are there. It's still a free tool, but helping us keep the lights on in storage and things with saving.
Yeah.
And probably some future development in the future. If
you like it though, hey, this has been a free tool for I don't know, 4 years now. It's been free for a long time. So if you like the tool and you use it, we would love to have your support, if nothing else, just to support us, because we want to continue developing and adding to it. It's literally been free time. So if you'd be willing, we'd love to have you support us as well and continue to investing into the tool.
Well, and I mean, I've done a bunch with themes and talked a lot about it, and I've definitely, themes have been my way of getting more developer from JSON, VS Code, all that.
Did you just say developer-y?
Yeah.
Is that a new word? That's awesome.
Just understanding, just understanding objects and list and basically just how it's been important with honestly everything. But the reason why I just took so much time was themes initially, because you had to go into the theme file, but you didn't know what was available. Then you had to go to Matt Rudy or Dave Eversfeld's template.
David Eldersfeld, yep.
And
even now, even their template examples they have, they're out of date.
Out of date.
So they're already old and they don't have all the properties now. So even if you went to these examples, the examples they have are old. And so they're upkept, but how can you stay up to date with thousands of properties? We're spending some real time to make sure that happens and everything's up to date. One thing I'll note here, one feature that I found on the tool that I was kind of rolling around in the theme files, there's now a column width. So one thing you can't set inside the desktop properties is the width of the columns inside your tables. The theme file enables the value of the column width to be set. So this is something you can set in the theme file that you can't even set with the UI inside desktop.
So we have a property that not even Microsoft supports.
Well, they support it.
They support it, just not in the UI.
So that is one property. So go check it out. Go check out the theme generator. There'll be more videos coming to help explain how it works, and we're going to continue enhancing it and adding more features to it. So just to continue enriching that experience to make it a little bit better for you. and working with your theme files. All right, let's go over to some events that are coming out. There's some great events coming up here. One that's coming up very soon, March 6th through the 10th, is the Global Power BI Summit. This is Reza's company's global summit. This is one of the largest, I think, Power BI events online globally that are out there. So check it out. It's globalpowerbisummit.com. We'd highly recommend you go check it out. And it's going to be a fun event. All of us are speaking at it. So if you can't get enough of us now, you're more than welcome to listen to us for 3 more hours while you're doing the Global Summit. We'd highly recommend that one. It works very well. And then also the SQL Bits conference is also coming up in the ICC Wales area, March 14th through 18th. And we'll give you a discount for that one. So if you want 5% off, use PowerBI.tips 5 to get 5% off going to the SQL Bits conference in ICC Wales. And you'll see Tommy there because he's speaking at the conference. And surprise, I'm going as well. So I decided to go to the conference, and so I'll be there as well. If you don't want to talk to me, you can go talk to Tommy. He's much more fun than I am anyway. So you can go hang out with Tommy and chill and see what's going on with him.
We're having some fun.
Exactly.
Swords. You guys are wearing swords, right? Taking your swords along.
Exactly. I got to figure out what I'm going to wear.
What is it? The D&D theme?
I think it's Dungeons and Dragons themes. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out like what's going on with that whole elephant thing.
You don't have an option now, Tommy. You have Mike along with you. He's gonna rock it.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to rock it.
You got to represent, man.
Well, I was thinking about going to get one of those like Mario riding Yoshi costumes and just the inflatable and just ride around that. That would be pretty funny.
You told me to be the dinosaur, so
I told Tommy he should just be the dinosaur. Get the inflatable dinosaur costume. Just roll around with that thing on. It'd be funny. Anyways, so those are kind of the main events here. We would love to see you attend some of these events. Again, some discount codes there in case you want to see that as well. So thank you all very much for listening and bearing with us while we go through some of our sponsorship things. All right, on to the main topic today. So this has been maybe what I'll say, a hotly contested item across the Explicit Measures podcast here. I believe Tommy got really excited about the metrics app and all the things you can do with metrics and how great it is. And Michael will say was a little more hesitant. I was a little bit more skeptical in it. I think I'd have to go back and actually look at the episodes and see what my thoughts were. I think my initial thoughts were it was a bit rough when it got out initially, and it will be able to be a better tool if it was enriched or had some solid development time on top of it. I think it could be. I think my thought was it could be a good tool. It just needed some time to mature. So here we are. How many years has it been out, Tommy? Like a year now? A year and a half?
I think it's a year and a half at this point.
Maybe a little over a year now. I don't really know exactly how long it's been out, but so where are we at now? What's going on with metrics? There's a whole bunch of features. Tommy's got a noodle of links here, a plethora of links.
A plethora of links,
and we'll go through some of those.
I think this goes back to something you said a while when metrics actually I think it was actually when we started our podcast in May of 2020, right? Or 2021. I don't know. When did we start our podcast, guys?
I think it was about 192 episodes ago.
Yes,
May
but
4th,
what year?
2021.
2021. Okay.
2021.
That was the Business Application Summit the same month, and they introduced metrics. So I literally at the same time, and I already saw the potential. You're like, nah, I don't know. But anyway, since
it was rough in the beginning, though.
It was rough.
It was rough. It was bumpy.
Basic. So it didn't have a lot of errors. It wasn't like something like data marks where there were a lot of bugs and issues. It was just simplistic.
It was very simplistic.
You said though, at that time, I think it was like our third episode. Listen, you want to see where Microsoft is going to focus, where people are using their tool. It's going to be where they're updating and they're putting their features. Well, since April of 2022, so I'm not even going back May 2021. They've come out with, I think, over 8 major updates to Power BI metrics. Used to be goals, so for those who are wondering. And these aren't just like small updates. And I can't think of another feature outside of desktop in Power BI that's had this much attention and this many updates in this amount of time. And actually, I would be intrigued. I don't think there's actually one tool, feature, or area of Power BI that they have focused on more. If you look at this, that's
I
had this
know.
many what?
AI.
No, but they haven't come out with the updates, though. Not
No, I'm just teasing
either
you.
working on it. They're working on
They're
it.
working on it, but
They're
not
working
and
on
not
it.
been getting better though.
Yeah, those people have been spending their time on Bing. So, but really, like if you look at the list of all these articles, I'm going to go through them quickly, and because they're all significant. So,
Well,
let's
maybe let's slow down here just a little bit. So maybe let's go. We want to go through the links, and what I'll do is we'll probably have to just kind of. I think we should just touch on the article and just kind of like drop the link in the chat window so people can kind of follow along as well, or if they want to go get some of the chat items there. But I do think overview to give us just an overview, really, roughly, Tommy. There's going to be new users. We're going to be people hearing about metrics for the first time. Just give us kind of like the once over of okay. What are metrics, and why would organizations even care about them? What's the point here?
So, really the biggest part with metrics is it's a dynamic way of us looking at our data, and it starts there. It's really the only Power BI to me tool or feature that's not just simply I'm a developer and I can start using this. Because in order to use metrics, it's really built on the OKR or objective key results methodology and in a sense framework where we need what are we trying to do, and it's not just we're trying to increase sales. We want to increase our reach. We want to explore more products. So what are going to be the actual results that will say that we're successful or not? So a lot on the OKR framework. So scorecards really build into that in terms of the way you're actually building. Again, it's simple to use, but without if you don't have the business values there, it's going to be really not the results are going to be odd. So the tool itself, what it can do, which is really neat, is all you have to do is set up a scorecard where you can set up your target based on milestones, based on multiple milestones in a year, and you can set that manually, and or you can even connect to external sources. The biggest part is what I can do is I can take all the data from all my reports, and I can connect to any data point in any report that I have access to. What Power BI will do for the target and the current metric that you connect to will track that over time. So just a real quick example that just shows the real neat part of this is if I had a bunch of cards in multiple reports that showed the year-to-date sales and year-to-date marketing, and I wanted to put all those year-to-date numbers in one place, am I going to create another report with all those data sets? No, I can actually just create a scorecard and connect to each one. There's a lot more that goes into how that connecting works in terms of what else you can do, but that's the basic idea, and which really finally brings to the forefront what's important to me. So
you're talking about the OKR framework, right? Like you have objectives, and then the key results are I think to me much more aligned with data strategies. Like you're going to hit your key results result in something quantifiable. So are metrics in Power BI just the key results, or can you also do objectives and key results like within there, like that layer?
So what they've actually been working on the side, not the Power BI team, but Microsoft, is something called Viva Goals. And
Okay,
that's
so
exactly,
this was my
yeah,
follow-up.
yeah.
So the complete picture is Viva goals and metrics together.
Yes.
Okay, walk
Which makes
me
sense.
through that.
Yeah.
Walk me through that and how that.
Okay, so
like,
where's
So-
Viva Goals here? Let's go a little bit higher here. Power BI metrics is a specific Power BI product thing, but it looks like they're trying to leverage the same tech in other parts in the organization, which maybe would make sense why they're putting so much emphasis around metrics here. It's being used by another whole product that they're trying to message around.
So what Viva Goals though too, in order to I'm using it now, and that's not a plug and play, so to speak, and that's really meant more for it's kind of almost more real project based, rather with Power BI in the integration is just show me what's relevant to me from the data point. So it's not the full stack of OKR like Viva Goals is,
right?
But
So clarifying question here, which has kind of been my concern initially with goals/metrics in Power BI, right? It made a lot of sense for something that I could implement on my team, but how would I go about scaling that in the organization? And it sounds like Viva Goals is the framework by which like an organization could roll out their OKR
Oh
objective, like
yeah.
framework across the whole thing. And then you could teach teams how to leverage Power BI metrics to drive your key results towards those overall objectives. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, like from Viva Gold's point of view, that's an organization down type of tool where there's really more that oversight on someone's watching the assignees, the status, and it integrates with Power BI. You can actually connect to your scorecards and your data from Power BI and Viva Goals. But I mean, that is something that you would be in every day in terms of the Viva Goals. So I don't want to spend too much time on the Viva Goals functionality, just because like I said, they before they even launched Viva Goals, they had on there, what is it, the adoption.microsoft. I think months before they even released Viva Goals, they had basically like 9 PDFs. One was, I think, a 135-page document of like getting started with the OKR methodology and Viva Goals. So there is a mindset and integration and, in a sense, build up that you need from a business point of view that's outside of just a data culture. Power BI scorecards and metrics, you don't need to do that much research and culture change, I think. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it totally does.
So I think it gives us a good overview of the metrics. Let's talk about maybe where. So I maybe, and again, you guys tell me if this is the right direction we should go here. But as I'm thinking about this, my initial thought around metrics was just kind of what I knew about it. I was trying to figure out what the right use cases for metrics would be. It seems like Microsoft's definitely attached themselves to this OKR way of thinking, right? That's like the new way that they're trying to align a lot of their product. What is our objective? How can we measure ourselves to that? And I think this actually makes a lot of sense when you're as an employee and your manager's giving you these objectives or things. Everyone's trying to roll something up to some level. Everything, what do they make smart goals, right? Where you can measure them and quantify what you're actually doing. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious to see where you guys think good use cases fit for metrics. And I'll start with one that may or may not be a good use case, but I think when you start looking at like leadership metrics or KPI cards, I have worked with a number of companies that have a lot of data sets. In order to build a report with multiple KPIs on it, you have to bring data from that data source into a single report. And so a lot of times what I'll see is organizations will build these single Power BI reports that are like a dashboard. It has a lot of KPIs or cards or little tiny trends with something attached to them. And what I have found is the data owners of those different domains, like say, for example, headcount versus sales versus, maybe operations. Each of those departments technically have a different data steward. There's a different person who owns that data channel. And then the person who's generating the overview report, they need to have a connection into these other data sources. So what we find is there's a challenge here because the person developing these dashboards as a report page are limited in the way that they don't have the ability to update or load data from those other teams. Technically, the HR team should own its data. The ops team should own its data. So you actually have multiple data owners that are trying to report out their key metrics, and you're trying to load them together into one pane of glass or one area where you can understand those metrics. And I think this is really where, to me, one of the light bulbs came on for metrics was this makes a lot of sense. The fact that I can have the metric scorecard contain or link to many different reports. Think one scorecard to many reports. That solves my problem. I can let each of these domain owners own a portion of their data and make sure that it's refreshed. And then the KPI scorecard will just automatically absorb and pull in that data to the dashboard, which I think is really interesting.
A question and then a follow up to some of the comments you made.
Okay.
I'm not familiar. Like, how easy is it for us to have a shared objective? does that require all of us to have access to the same set of metrics?
So, yeah, as long as you had access to the same scorecard and then you set the assignees, you could, in a sense, both be followers of that metric. The other feature too that's makes it super easy is you can follow a particular metric rather than going through
alerts
that
you
whole
about stuff.
Yeah. So you can actually go to a scorecard, share the link, and then say, hey, this particular metric, there might be, you have a scorecard with 10 metrics, let's say. Only 4 of them are really relevant to you and you're accountable for, or that, in a sense, influence you. Well, rather than going back to the scorecard all the time, you can actually go to individual metrics and follow them, which then you'll get notifications anytime they change. So that's a great way in terms of you don't have to necessarily be the owner. And then,
so,
yeah,
and that's fine, right? Well, let me clarify why I asked the question, right? Because objectives could be shared between teams potentially, at least in my realms, right? Like we have a shared objective,
numbers, right?
and sure, right?
Customer sat,
have
something like that.
in order for us to develop something, we have needs across multiple different teams to provide, like, follow a process and provide information, right? Then we execute on it. The execution portion or development is, potentially me and my team. But in order for me and my team to operationally do what we need to in a fast-paced thing, all of the key results need to be followed every time we do things.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it. The shared objective is an interesting point because it's something I think that's real in a lot of organizations. The comment I wanted to make around your previous description, Mike, are KPIs are not necessarily key results. In fact, more often they're not at all, right? Because they, like, while KPIs are indicators of like the business or like certain things that we're tracking, key results are very time bound usually and very outcome oriented, right? So like we're tracking the things and either we pass, like it's either a pass fail on the key result depending on the objective, or it's we made progress towards an objective that is of a different type. And what I mean by that is, like, in the OKR framework, we have a committed objective. This is something that has to get done. Like, everybody's on the hook, and all the key results are either you did it or you didn't, and there's repercussions if you didn't. Then there's like stretch, or I think there's a different name for it, where you're essentially doing your innovation, right? Where bucketed in here are a bunch of key results towards driving towards that overall objective, but it's not necessarily, it takes more time from a team, from people, to actually achieve those things. And within the time bounds of a quarter or something like that, there's an acceptability threshold of how many key results were completed within that time frame. And then there's learning objectives, right, where key results would be driving towards people learning new languages or whatever the case may be to enhance the organizational levels of knowledge. In that committed areas where I'm really kind of leaning in here a little bit to understand, like, how much of this framework supports that, and differentiate a little bit between some of the metrics that we may have in reports, but at the same time, not to dissuade the fact that we might have those metrics already. It's just probably got a time bound on it, where in the metric we're saying, in this 90-day window, we care that your percentage went from 10 to 15.
Yes.
Success is 15 or above.
Yeah, and I guess my comment here is less around the OKR portion, was more about, in order to funnel data to the OKR, you need a KPI that's going to be like the starting point. And then my comment was more around, there is many domains of data that people want to look at. And so you're technically, you're not always the owner or the steward of that initial generation of the data. I mean, some people are going to say, I'm going to go load this data from Excel. Fine, not recommended, but you do it. And so when that pipeline breaks or that report breaks, I don't want to be the person who's managing the scorecard going to trace down why the thing broke. I want someone else to own it and be like, so one of the OKRs is your data will be up to date and frequent. Like, that's one of the metrics here. So how many times did this thing update? When was the last update on this thing? So there's other things here too that I think are also in play that again, my point was more around, I think scorecards make a lot of sense when you're pulling a lot of disparate KPIs together to form an OKR dashboard that then multiple people will own the source of information. And I think this is a scenario that comes across Power BI that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking like multiple workspaces, multiple teams, bringing all of it together.
Well, and I think this is why there's hesitation with metrics, and it's also probably the biggest feature, and I think the biggest plus of the scorecard features. Unlike any other tool or feature in Power BI to show data, honestly, all I need is a database and basically something to visualize, and I can put something out there. I can put a visual out there. Doesn't mean it's actually effective. With scorecards, you have to be very selective in planning out your scorecard before you use it. Because it doesn't, even if you don't go the whole OKR method and you have the whole framework, let's just go to the basics of building that up at an organization where what's important to you and what's your success look like? If you're a marketing or sales team, if I'm sales, how many outbound calls have I made? Right. And actually having a place to actually track those things. Or if I'm a manager of the team, yes, reports have that, but too often we have this all over multiple reports. And then again, those don't necessarily, they track the data, but they're not tracking the individual cards in there. Yes. So the users have to be very proactive to say what's going on in that data points.
But I also want to add to your point here, Tommy. If you have 150 KPIs and those are your KPIs, I don't really think you have KPIs.
No one said that. I completely agree with that.
I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
I think your point is, I'm trying to emphasize your point a bit more, as I'm thinking, and Marquee Insights is a company that does a good job of like really jumping on this scorecards and scorecard metrics. They've been very vocal about helping out, and it's a conversation about what we think is important. And so I really agree with your point. I think it's good to have a conversation about what is important. Yeah. What do we really need to monitor to add value at the end of the day? Because if you have 150 metrics, I don't think you have metrics. You just have a bunch of numbers showing up in front of you. Are you able to really drive a business with that many? And Microsoft themselves will talk about how they drive their business. They had too many metrics to begin with as well. And they had to go from like, I don't know, 100 down to like 50 or something like that, or 48 or something. They kept trying to pare down and say, what are the key things that we need to drive toward? Because we can't go every direction. We need to go the same direction.
Yeah, honestly, I would be more concerned. I think a lot of organizations, they don't have enough, like true to Seth's points, really true KPIs established, because yes. they have the wrong idea of what it is. They're like, oh, it's just sales. Like, okay, well, what is that doing? And we have to increase, the number of leads by 10 million, but to what objective, right? And I think that's
how are you going to get to that done?
Yeah,
like, you want to double sales. Well, double sales with what? The same number of people?
We're going to double sales by going from 10 million to 20 million. And I've heard that before. Like, wow, like
that's great. How are you going to hire all those people to do that extra work, or what? What is that?
How?
Yeah,
this is one of those things where metric scorecards on the OKR framework is I like OKRs a lot better than OGSMs, because I've now been in environments where I've played.
Can you define an OGSM?
Organizational.
Should have just Googled it, I guess. I'm sorry. Organizational. You can Google it faster.
Goals. Somebody in chat's gonna save me. It's
Where's Greg Baldini? Baldini, calling all Baldini. Objectives, goals,
like how
strategies, and measures.
Yeah, goals, strategies, measures. Okay. So the reason I like OKRs better is, in frameworks where you have OGSM, it's not like your company doesn't have the overall goals, right? Yes. That you want to achieve, and that filters down to the different teams, but they're much more loose, right? There's nothing that says, here's the path how I hit that goal and objective, and that's what OKRs force somebody to do. And I like the idea that Tommy's pushing forward here, which is we need to be more thoughtful about the things that move the needle. And when you have objectives in an OKR framework, if you set an objective to hit, like, what did you guys just say? Like, we're going to go from $10 to $15 million in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Key results are how you do that, and it's
Yes.
time bound, right?
Yes. Yes.
So if your yearly objective is to increase by $5 million, you're retroactively looking at how would I have to accomplish that in the year, and what amount of sales would I need in each of these time buckets? Because a
That makes
fourth
a
of the
lot
way
more
through the
sense.
year,
Yeah.
like I would know if I'm on track or not with key results, because I'd have key results that definitely give me early indicators on whether or not sales is increasing.
Yes.
We need more. Like, how are you going to achieve 5 more million?
Spend
Key
more
result,
marketing money, build
right?
more
Key result.
products. Yeah.
Do these things, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. The output of these things, or activities is an expected X, right? When we have X, we can sell X, we can do this, and in this quarter, we should achieve 1.5 million. And then we expect that to snowball, because during that first quarter as well, we're going to like hire more salespeople.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to do this thing. And then Q2 is this. And like, so you're forced to lay out the roadmap for success, and key results do that. And tracking, like if you're building metrics to track these key results as opposed to
Yeah.
just generalized KPIs, like how are we doing over like month over month? How are we doing, quarter over quarter? Well, yeah, that tells you something, but it doesn't give you the action behind it, or whether or not. What we talk a lot about is, what does that mean? Just because I'm producing that number, what does it mean to the business? Are we positive? Are we negative? Just because it's up, does that mean it's up where we expect it to be? And these additional metrics allow us to say, hey, great, I'm going to look at the metric that shows us quarter over quarter, but that quarter over quarter better be at 20% instead of, whatever else, because that 20% in green by itself looks great. But if it's 20%, put up a next 40%, and you're in red, friend, right? Like, you got a long way to go. And I think that's what's really key to me about having teams and leaders like pushed into this sort of framework, is it helps teams solve like those problems and think through them to develop all of the criteria that actually make a KPI valuable, right? If it's a key performance indicator, that should align with a key result we expect out of that in a certain time bound frame. And that's why I love about like how much time they've invested in this, because it is now at the point where I'm totally going to plug my stuff into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's just how much does it scale? And that's where the Viva Goal kind of thing plugs into it.
And I like the idea of the Viva Goals is more organizational bound. It's a bit broader than just your Power BI reporting. And I like the fact that they're using the concept or the functionality from Power BI. It's a solid tool. Like if you're going to do, like this is what bugs me to some degree is I don't know why Microsoft doesn't use Power BI everywhere for all their things. Like you go to the ideas site, people have already made ideas reports. Why not go to the ideas.powerbi.com and have a Power BI report at the top to help you search for things? Like embed reports that they're doing on their data inside their application. To me, that just makes all the more sense and helps people think even more thoroughly about what you're trying to build into whatever your application is. So having Power BI metrics go into Viva Goals, yeah, totally makes sense.
Well, and I mean, we're talking this whole time so far, we've just talked about more about the mindset of the scorecard and the metrics feature. We have really not even talked about the tool and like the actual technical like features that it actually has, which to me is significant, and I think is honestly the reason why there's been a lot of holdout there, is because there's this whole mindset that we have to discuss before we're going to choose the tool. I can't think of any other feature in Power BI where we're having, I mean, I know we go into philosophy a lot, but we have not touched the tool at all, because we have to, for ourselves, understand the goal, the objective, the KPI, who does it affect? All those things go into that in no way that DAX doesn't, or even a report does. And and I think that's why, whether it's a must-use feature, that's basically saying it would be part of your install every time you open up Power BI, probably not, because it does require to use it. I think this conversation, and it's some either template of filling out with an organization, you cannot create, I don't think anyone could create a successful scorecard on their own, because it's who does it affect? What are those milestones? And to me, that, like I said, there's no other. I don't think there's any other feature or out there in Power BI that's even close to that.
I like your point there, because I think this aligns well with what I was thinking was going. Metrics. So if you think about like all the different things you can make in Power BI, you can make reports, you can connect to Excel, you can make pagina reports, you can get access to data. You think about what audiences those particular reports or visuals are serving. When you go like towards the I just need to get access to data, you're not talking about like the individual user. You're not trying to broadly service a lot of people potentially. You're just talking about one person's need, and they're going to do some of their own analysis offline somewhere else, right? But when you start talking about metrics and goals, you're not talking about like a team or a department or the whole organization. And so now you're really talking about these are important metrics or things you're trying to measure at a larger level than just one person. So for me personally, maybe I would do some metrics building myself for me, but I think my goals and things that I'm tracking are very specific to just what I'm doing. It would be less around looking at goals to be used for organizational things. Another thought that I wrote down before we started talking today was, I think another really good use case for goals is starting to integrate your data ops procedures into goals. So let me give you some context where I think this might make sense. Data ops is the concept of using production level measures as you would with like development. So if you have DevOps, right? So this was a concept that was born, when I was younger, right? It was a methodology that was pushed out where, everything is code. I can check in, check out stuff. I have a review process. I can get things in a metered way. If you think about data ops in the same way, your data ops is you have information. Every time you change a data model or add a measure to a model, there's a potential that someone accidentally modified something and added risks or potentially errors. Anytime a human touches something, there's potential addition for problems when you publish stuff. And so where I'm going with this is we're actually using this right now. We're using metrics to build a data set. And in that data set, have a couple KPIs that are very specific to that data set. For example, sales for December of 2022. That's a specific number. Every time you publish the data model, you would expect that number to be the same. As we run our data pipelines, we're extracting out every time a table is being written, we're looking at how many records were written per day. And if we see a dip or a drop in that expectation, we now know there's a problem. We also have metrics around like, well, yesterday I wrote, 1,000 records. Today I wrote 1,000 records. And I know that the total table size as well. All these little tiny data points kind of give you some verification or some indication as to what's happening inside your data process. Because if a table fails or a data model doesn't load, you don't get data. Or if your backend process fails and your table deletes itself or doesn't load correctly, you may get a very wide difference in the number of records you're producing. So we're using this now to actually add data quality level OKRs as the data moves through the different process. So talking about like raw data up to gold or curated data sets. And I don't know, thoughts on this one? Does anyone else use this? Has anyone else doing things? I think data ops is an up and coming topic. I think it's going to become more important, especially as you do more development.
You lost me at first, which is why you got the weird face, because I was like, wow, how does a process that is designed, I guess, for like basically a set of practices and process and technology to develop a repeatable thing tie into Power BI scorecards. But you ended with something that's very intriguing, which is having a source for some metrics around what is the threshold of acceptable performance, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Because
what you're going to be getting your data from, like,
if you know I should see, it's called 100 records in a day
every day,
is 90% of that acceptable? Is 95, right? And then
if I get 1,000, is that a problem?
As you're running through ETL processes or your dailies, writing those records somewhere to monitor and track that, and then see whether or not you're achieving that in your time-bound metric makes a lot of sense, because then you would know, like, your objective could be, I want 95%, 99% uptime, or my data should be
Yeah.
90% clean.
Yep.
Your key results are, okay, on a weekly basis, our average needs to be X amount. Like,
Exactly.
are we tracking towards that? And then you can kind of use that from not really a monitoring standpoint, but that automatically would roll up to the business and they would understand, like, yep, we're on track or we're not.
And the feature here, and Tommy, you were saying earlier, we're not talking about metrics features, but this is a metrics feature. So a feature of metrics that I really like is when you have a metric that you're going to be bringing in, it refreshes at the time the data set refreshes. So every morning or every hour or whatever you're doing from a refresh cycle standpoint, your data set, so it's like an automatic thing. The data set refreshes, your KPI or your card or your whatever you're going to build in the dashboards immediately gets an updated record because it knows to track that and push that data forward, which I think is very helpful here because now that automates a lot of it's basically pushing data as opposed to this concept where we usually use in Power BI where it's a pull of data. Everything's typically a pull. And there are solid use cases for when data needs to be pushed. And I think this is a good example of it's just automated, it just works. Dan's talking, and this is a great example, using snapshots of your data, right?
Yeah.
Taking this, and so as it pushes these single data points, right? If you have a KPI, if you have a number, basically this is a snapshotted window. You can't snapshot an entire table, but if you took a sum on a table, and that's why I was saying, maybe December 2022, or the US region has a sales number or goal or sales, tracking point, you can in time mark that as a basically a test, right? You can actually have a test kind of going. I'm going to modify this data set and I'm going to have a test that says this number should be this value within 5%. And are we making that number or not? And so that way, every time you run a data set in development, you can then test your data set to see if it's still working correctly. I think there's some really interesting, again, this is maybe abusing the system a little bit, but I think there's some validity for using metrics to help you quantify the quality of your data.
One of the last things I'll say too is it's so easy to, I think, rather than trying to go into scorecards, and I think where a lot of people get led astray is they go to scorecards and they treat it like a data model or report where it's like, okay, I got them built from the ground up. I'm going to, I need to configure everything right away. Where honestly, it's especially in an organization where the data culture and the KPIs is still, I don't want to say a new concept, but it's not communicated as much as if you were fully into the OKR culture. Using scorecards as almost a sandbox or a showcase of basically like what you can do to help that team get a better grip of their data. It's like, hey, they're asking for all the data dumps, right? It's like, okay, that's great. However, like what projects or campaigns are you working on? It's like, well, we're going to create a scorecard for you guys and try to work with your boss, your organization to try to, you want to build these scorecards because honestly, it leads to one place to look. But anyways, so I digress. There's a lot there, but building this simple scorecard built off a report they build, like, hey, I know that you wanted all this data dumps, but we walked with your team. You have these quarterly goals or KPIs. We're tracking them here and you can view them anytime now on the scorecard. And then basically working with the team to say, hey, you can actually check in here and say when things are going to launch. And then it's all connected to the Power BI reports that you already built. I've even done a few experiments where I would build the report rather than trying to configure the scorecard to work with the report. Did the other way around, where I try to build the report as an explanation of a scorecard, or in a way that it could work on its own, obviously as a report by itself. But
are you embedding the scorecard into the report?
No, I'm saying when you go, because one of the neat features with the scorecards is I can see a metric that's connected to a data set and then go to that report.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. So basically the metrics become like a landing page,
right,
or links to actual reports where the data resides.
Which is neat, but because also how you can connect to a data point, it's basically like a personal bookmark. You can create filters, personalize. Like I've done things before where I've connected to a current data point where I personalized the visual to make it a table, added an object, did a filter, and it works, and it'll track that way, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. That's
But
another neat feature of it. It'll actually track filtered items. And that's what I was thinking.
yeah.
Like, this is where it makes sense. Like, from a data quality perspective, like, I can set in, we just did a YouTube blog that is, or it was a user group. The Iowa user group came in and did a great presentation around how do you make tests on top of your Power BI data. Well, this is yes, you can do that, but it requires you to write DAX. It requires you to like think about what your KPIs are. You have to go use Tax Studio. Like the example was DAX Studio. All good things if you are a very heavy Power BI developer. But what you just described there, Tommy, this is a very simple, low code, no code way of adding a metric that would give you a single data point, filter it, add filters to it. It retains that filter context every time the report refreshes, which is great.
Yeah. So in wrapping up, kind of right, and if I look at our metrics and goals now a must use, I'm gonna ask like kind of a clarifying question of like, to me, it's about defining success, right? It's what in success to an organization is what the organization wants you to work on and focus on, and for us as teams to be able to tell them whether or not we're achieving those. And the OKR framework and metrics are great ways to automate and track those with some pre-planning and thinking through like what are the things we need to accomplish, what are the key results I need to see in order to hit these objectives, and it keeps us on track. So for me, whereas first when it came out from a technology perspective, there were a lot of gaps that made me kind of leery of it being able to scale to my needs. I no longer have those. So I would say, yeah, I mean, any actions toward like using this tool to measure actions towards measuring the right stuff and tracking towards objectives are absolutely capabilities that I can achieve using this tool, and I am going to this year.
I'll dig it. Tom, any final thoughts for you?
I think for me right now, the biggest part is trying to think of a better way to easily implement it in a sense, a little quicker, rather than going through the whole discussion. Because again, 45 minutes today, we didn't even talk about all those major updates that Microsoft even did. And I think that's what usually occurs. So how can I create an easier way and a template in a sense as we build, we have our checklist for Power BI reports. What can we do with scorecards to easily kind of do a sandbox phase of that as well? So but I think for me, I love the new features, what's coming out, what's on the roadmap. So
I like what they've been doing here. I think Microsoft is doing a wise move here. I think they've been developing it strategically. I think they're integrating it with other bigger products, which I think is why you're seeing so much development on top of it. At the end of the day, all you're trying to do is make decision-based data output, basically, right? That's what you're trying to do. And I think this is a really good tool to use. And again, I may be abusing it slightly and saying, hey, it's for data quality. It could be these other things. But I would really seriously consider, like, figure out how this would work. And if you have, if you're building dashboards, if you're building things, focus on keep routing, explore these things. If you're building dashboards, if you're trying to pull data from multiple different sources, if you have different owners of data and you're trying to resolve to a scorecard or a dashboard, this makes a lot of sense, I think. And I think I'm seeing that more clearly now than I had when they first came out with it. And again, I think it's a lot of the enhancements here too. A lot more APIs, a whole bunch of extra stuff in the back end. You can programmatically make goals now and things. So I think it's a lot more intuitive than it was previously. I like where it's going. I think this is going to be another feature to watch and will be very impactful for companies moving forward. With that, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us for another hour of banter around Power BI related things. This has been always fun for us and really, really enjoy it. So our only ask or request back to the audience here, if you like the content that we have here and it's adding some value to your daily workflow, we just would really appreciate you recommending this to someone else. So thank you all very much for your time. Your listenership is valuable. We know this is an hour of your day, or 45 minutes if you're on 1.5 speed or something like that as well. So it may be a bit faster for some of you who can listen to Tommy and Michael act like chipmunks here on the show. So we appreciate your time, and we'd love it if you'd share it with somebody else. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find the podcast anywhere they're available: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcast. And make sure to subscribe so you can listen to all the 190 plus episodes on your favorite device, or join live in the conversation every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Central.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.